Alright everybody, Career Clusters is a piece of what we're going to use with our curriculum analysis this year. In addition, there's been a lot of talk about career readiness lately with the Governor's Summit last week and school finance funding change possibility from Governor Brown back a couple of weeks ago. We've also got enrollment, pre-enrollment coming up for students, and so it kind of all ties into doing this presentation today. Basically, through the presentation, we're going to cover three main topics. What are career clusters? Why bother with career clusters? And why is it important for me to know as an education professional? A very brief history. This concept actually came about as discussions back in the 1970s. From there, the United States Department of Education actually took it up in the 1990s and started developing it, having pilot programs, doing some research about it, so on and so forth. In about 2002, they actually ran out of seed money, and so they handed it off to the National Association of State Directors of Career and Technical Education Consortium, which is how CTE got involved in this process. So it started out as a national initiative, and then Career and Technical Education took it up and did a lot with it, and then we've now given it back. And there's a lot of different entities who are partnering to help with the Career Cluster Initiative, both education, business and industry, and the government. So in a nutshell, what exactly are career clusters? If you sum it down to just initially what it is, it's a group of occupations and industry that are used as a tool for curriculum design, and all of these occupations or industries have some commonalities in them in some way, shape, or form. It's also important to know that the concept behind career clusters is not new, but the framework in which it is being lined out is completely new for education. There are 16 career clusters as part of the national initiative. Each state can take and tweak these how they see fit depending on the business and industry needs in their state. Kansas has adopted all 16. There's a few differences just in names. Business management and administration, I believe, is known as business entrepreneurship and administration. Marketing, sales, and service, they've dropped the sales and service, and it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This is actually the visual that Kansas has developed for the Kansas Career Fields and Clusters model. So if you look in the center of the flower, so to speak, it has foundational knowledge and skills. This is also known as 21st century skills. All academic and technical and elective courses should be teaching those concepts. Critical thinking, problem solving, communication, but they need to be taught in the context of your curriculum. The petals that surround that center are actually 6 different career fields. The reason they came up with 6 is because there's 6 consultants at the State Department. And then from there you'll see out further are the clusters and then the pathways within each cluster. So if you look at the top left, you've got environmental agricultural systems, and then further out it's the agriculture, food, and natural resources career cluster, and then the bullets underneath that cluster are the pathways within that cluster that someone can go into. So one consultant at the State Department works with all of that. If you go underneath it, business, marketing, and management, you'll see that this particular consultant has to work with 4 different career clusters and several different bullets. But you'll notice all of those relate, those career clusters relate to business and industry usually in some way. If we go further, this is actually the graphic of what Kansas is going to offer at the secondary level. So we're offering all 16 career clusters, but you'll notice there's a lot less pathways that we're offering. And that's based on decisions made at the state level with business and industry advisory committees, based on the needs that we have in our state and the resources we have. I could do this graphic again and just put on there specifically what we are offering at Manhattan High School. I haven't done that at this point in time. So if you look back, the first one has 16 career clusters and 79 pathways. If you look at this one, it has 16 career clusters, and I think we're offering about 39 different pathways in the state of Kansas currently. Okay, so career clusters we are using as a tool. It connects academic, technical, and 21st century skills and is used in career planning. The idea is to help learners transition from one educational level to another, middle school to high school to post-secondary, or transition them from education straight into the workforce, whether that be business and industry, military, so on and so forth. The theory behind the Career Clusters framework is that it provides a seamless education for students. Career clusters are based on the idea of having a program of study for a student. Similar to at the post-secondary level, a student having a college major with a course sequence that they have to take in order to graduate. A note on this particular program of study design is that there are a lot of other things that play into it. So if you'll notice around the outside edge, the reason this was started was because of legislation and policies. Going around clockwise, there are evaluations of this to make sure it is valid and reliable. We do have accountability pieces to it, to the point where we have to, after a year out, go and find our completers or concentrators and find out what they're doing, where they're working, where they're going to school, how they're doing, so on and so forth, and we have to document all of that information. Keep going around, and we also have partnerships. We work a lot with business and industry in order to figure out what we need to do within our programs. Professional development, this is what you're doing today, a piece of professional development with programs of study. General education staff need to know about this concept and how they fit into it. And then more specialized professional development for career and technical education teachers, so they have certifications to be able to certify your students. You may have heard a lot about credentialing and certificates recently with Brownback's new proposal, and the idea is that when our students leave us at the high school level, they already have something tangible to take with them if they want to go into the workplace and start out at a higher pay or more advanced work than just the average student coming out of the high school system. There's a secondary and a post-secondary level. We do have college and career readiness standards, which we base things on. There is curriculum and instruction that goes into it. We do have end-of-program assessments, and then we have the ability to credential students if they so choose. Guidance and advisement is a big piece of this, and credit transfer and agreements. I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. When I talk about career clusters, I want you to know what they don't do. They're not taking away from current programs, they're expanding upon them. They're not taking away from occupational areas, they're actually increasing students' awareness of what they can do later on in life. And they're not tracking learners into a single job. So if they take a series of courses, they're only going to be able to be a welder. That's not the idea. We give them a broad base of knowledge and skills so they have some way to transfer into different jobs if they so choose, but if they want to be specialized in an area, they have knowledge and skills specifically for that as well. What they do is provide more career options for learners. So somebody who wants to go into the health science field may go, oh, well, health science, I could be a doctor or a nurse. Well, there's thousands upon thousands of jobs, more than just a doctor or a nurse in the health science field. And so it exposes them and makes them aware of some of those options that they may have never thought of before. It provides a framework for addressing the entire world of work. All jobs fit somewhere within the 16 career clusters. It provides a picture of knowledge of how to transfer vertically or horizontally knowledge and skills. It provides a framework that current programs fit into. Currently, we've transitioned, after this school year, we'll have transitioned all of our career and technical programs into the career cluster framework, and then we may add upon that in the future. And it helps provide a seamless education for all students, no matter what they choose to do. Just because I know a lot of people are visual learners and like to see how this works, if you start out at the bottom, you have your career cluster, which is foundational knowledge and skills that all students are exposed to in all classes. Really, when we're looking at the career cluster level, students are more at 7th, 8th, 9th grade level. They start to move more into pathway coursework when they get into 9th, 10th, and 11th grade level, where it's a little more focused as far as the knowledge and skills. And then they move into career specialties and occupations, which is more at the 11th, 12th, and post-secondary level. Note, they still can move to different career specialties and occupations, even with being at the top of the pyramid, because they have knowledge and skills that are a broad base. So they could move from a CNA to an LPN to an RN, depending on what amount of education they choose to receive. Okay, so why bother with career clusters? Really, the short-term reasons are not necessarily, in particular, the first one, what I want to focus on. Yes, the Board of Education has given the directive that we need to continue to bring money into the school district, and that's one of the reasons why we should be doing this. Really, I want to focus on the long-term reasons because that's what benefits the students the most. It's a personal and family investment, and here I'm talking about time and money. If students start focusing or start figuring out or start exploring or becoming more aware at the secondary level of what they want to do, what they're interested in, what they're good at, then they're going to save themselves and or their family personal investment of money when they get into post-secondary institutions, and time, because they won't be changing their majors quite so much. That's the hope if they're exploring things at the secondary level. It's also a way of connecting education and employment. How many times have you heard a student say, "Oh, why do I have to take this class? I'm never going to use it later on in life." And so it's a way to start making those connections between what they're doing in the classroom at the secondary level to what they may be doing later on in life. Workforce development, it's giving them a broad base of knowledge and skills that they can transfer from one job to the next, and if they go into the more of the pathway specific, they get even more specific knowledge and skills to be able to be a good employee later on in life. That ultimately leads to economic development. Obviously, they're going to be in a job, hopefully, whether they go straight into the job after high school or whether they go on to post-secondary education, work their way through post-secondary education so they don't have as much debt, or get into the workforce after their post-secondary education. They're going to be paying taxes, they're going to be maybe starting their own businesses, and that's going to spur economic development.